Hi everyone, welcome back to Inside Archaeology, where we dig deep into the study of human history through our artifacts, monuments, and remains. A journey through time that uncovers the mosaic of human civilization. Today, I'm very happy to bring you another video in my Ask an Archaeologist series. Our guest is Disha Ahluwalia, an Indian archaeologist studying for her PhD. While not excavating on sites around the country, Disha also writes a regular column for The Print and runs the Confessions of an Archaeologist Instagram account. In our interview, we speak about what inspired her, how archaeology in India is looked after, and what challenges she's had to overcome as a woman working in a male-dominated field. She has had to rise above prejudice and cultural norms to pursue her career and is a shining example of what you can do if you put your mind to it. Without further ado, let's dig in. So welcome to the channel, Disha. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're going to jump right into our first question, which is what inspired you to study archaeology?
It's a long story actually. I wanted to study literature. I don't know, I just ended up getting into a history course in college, my undergrad. I remember attending the first class on human evolution about archaeology, and that's where I was introduced to archaeology. Actually, like in school, we do get introduced to archaeology, but it's just like one chapter. It's not much. It's not in detail. While you're growing up, your teenage years, you're introduced to archaeology, via Indiana Jones movies and etc. So actually, it was in college where I was introduced to archaeology, and then I started looking for, where I can do my masters, where I can work, and etc. And yeah, and then of course, there were a lot of documentaries on Nat Geo at that time. Egyptologists were doing some digging around pyramids, so it was quite interesting. But yeah, that's what really got me into archaeology. But I really didn't know back then what I was getting myself into. It was just a fantasy. I think most of the students, have this sort of illusion and fantasy around archaeology. Yeah, so it was same with me as well.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it turns out better than what you even thought it would be as well, right?
Yeah, at times, yeah.
Yeah, so getting into that kind of a bit more about archaeology and how it operates in India, how is it like regulated and looked after?
So we have a centralized agency which works for the central government. So, there are a lot of states in India, different states. Archaeological Survey of India, which was actually created in 1800s. The aim was simple: to record and understand the history of an archaeology of India. So that's when archaeology was introduced, in 1800s, with Alexander Cunningham being the first Director General of Archaeological Survey of India. Post independence, post 1947, when the newly formed independent India was created, with given number of states now were increased, because small kingdoms, small ruling dynasties were sort of abolished, and they were included into the statehood. So each state had its own department of archaeology, and then there was a center department. So you have at the top of the pyramid the center department, which is the Archaeological Survey of India, which holds authority in terms of giving licenses, registration of antiquities. The laws are, managed by them. They have monuments also, important monuments like Taj Mahal and other highly important monuments, archaeological sites are, taken care of by the Archaeological Survey of India. Then you have the next category, which is the state archaeology department. So each state, each union territory has its own department of archaeology, which works in terms of protecting archaeological sites and monuments, and undertake conservation as well. But of course, everything in terms of archaeology is always sort of managed by the center. The license is given, excavation license is given by the center, which is the Archaeological Survey of India. So you can't basically dig any site without the permission of the Archaeological Survey of India. And it's quite important also, I think, because given the sheer size of the country and the rich archaeological heritage of the country, it's very easy for a lot of antiquities, a lot of structures, sculptures, they get smuggled out. So because of that, there are a lot of laws which are then placed sort of to tackle these issues. And then you have ASI looking after the major sites, and then of course taking care of antiquities.
So I'm in Scotland. So the Historic Environment Scotland is the one that's kind of the centralized body that's in charge of kind of taking care of the antiquities, and they have their officers and stuff. But then when it comes to like development or something like that, we have this entire private and commercial sector of companies of archaeologists that will come in and do excavations in advance of construction and stuff like that. Do you have something similar to that in India? Is there like a private industry?
We don't have any private organizations. So we don't have commercial archaeology at all. They should be now, because the city limits are sort of growing, and you have a lot of archaeological sites in the rural areas which are now destroyed. So commercial archaeology, I think, is an important tool in terms of salvaging the past, the archaeological heritage. But unfortunately, so far, we don't have any private agency undertaking that. We have the central government only, and only central government doing that. But for conservation of monuments, we do have private agencies, and we do have NGOs, but not for archaeology, like the mainstream field archaeology.
So does the ASI then, if they want a site to be rescued, for example, when there's going to be construction, do they send out archaeologists to do that?
Yes, but then it's not as regular as it is in the UK. There are laws, but ASI is one organization which has a handful of people. Imagine managing the entire country, sitting in New Delhi. But I get so many mails and I get so many people contacting me, mailing me, saying that they have this temple near their village, and they have this archaeological mound which is totally gone. Who should they go? They have been mailing ASI. They've been visiting the regional offices, but nothing has happened. So the problem is because we don't have even the sub agency to do that. Even if it has to be under the government, it can be. But just one agency, like the one we have with conservation of monuments. If you have something like that, maybe we will be able to salvage a lot of archaeological heritage. But no, we don't have that.
Maybe you can be the one who starts it. There we go.
Maybe, who knows?
Going back to yourself and your career, you've mentioned you've got your undergraduate degree, your master's, and you're now studying for your PhD. So what made you decide to pursue a PhD, and what topic is your thesis on?
For me, I unfortunately did not have much guidance. When I started my master's, there was no one to actually tell me where to go, which university will be the best, and which scholarship to apply. And I had no way of knowing how I will survive in archaeology. And it was just a sheer, I think, luck that I met right people at the right time. So when I was doing my master's, I was in southern India, and I knew that I want to do field archaeology. By the time I was doing my master's, I was not trained in archaeology, like the field work. So I got to know about Institute of Archaeology, which actually, was started by Sir Mortimer Wheeler in 1944. It was just few years before the independence of India. And there is Institute of Archaeology, I think, in London as well, if I'm not mistaken. So both institutions were established around the same time. The idea was very simple in India, to train the next generation of Indian archaeologists, in field archaeology. So the Institute of Archaeology still is running, and is under the aegis of Archaeological Survey of India. So I knew that if I need to get a good exposure in Indian archaeology, and I need to work in India, I need to get into that institution, and I need to get that training. And it's a 2-year rigorous training in archaeology, the laws, conservation. We have 3 to 4 months of field work, which is excavation. So I was lucky enough to get through, and there's only 15 seats, so it's a limited seat. And that's when I actually got to know what archaeology is all about. I got the taste of archaeology. I literally got to taste the dirt. And while I was working in my first excavation, I decided that I want to take this forward, and I want to study, I want to do research. I thought, I can do this. I like this subject a lot, and I did a small project during the training program. I worked on this pottery called the painted greyware, and it's sandwiched between the Bronze Age and Iron Age in India, and especially the northern India. So
Yeah.
it sort of lays the foundation for the second urbanization. So we have the Bronze Age, which is the first urbanization in the northwest and western part of the Indian subcontinent, which includes Pakistan and also parts of Afghanistan. And then the shift in the second urbanization was towards east, towards Ganges. So this particular archaeological culture is sort of sandwiched between. So you have in various sites where there is an overlap between the last deurbanized phase of the civilization, the Indus Valley civilization. And then you have this particular phase also transitioning into the Iron Age. And I was working in an area where the river Saraswati, which is mentioned in the Rig Vedas and the ancient texts, was said to have disappeared. And actually, what happened was there was a tectonic movement shift in the Himalayas, which actually blocked the water. Because of that, the river became a rain-fed river instead of glacial-fed river. And also there was shift, climatic changes. Because of that, the river sort of started to dry up. It became more shallow river, and there was a shift in settlement. So what I am actually trying to look at is how from Harappan to PGW the shift has happened in this, the area of Rajasthan, which moves towards Cholistan and Sindh in Pakistan, and this area where the settlement actually, there's a gap of 1,000 years between the Harappans and the next settlement. So I'm trying to understand how the landscape has changed. So basically, my work deals with more of settlement archaeology. What's the pattern of settlement, and what was the shift in hydraulic, like what was the situation in terms of climate, and also the landscape change. So that is what I'm working on. And the work actually started when I was doing my training at the Institute of Archaeology. So I was working at one site in that very region. It was an Indus Valley site and Harappan site. That's when I got to know about this research problem, and I'm still working on it. It's been like, what, 7 years? So I'm still working, and hopefully we'll finish my PhD soon.
What kind of like really drew you towards the painted ware culture? Is it just because there's this like gap and you want to know what's kind of in between and figuring it out, or
it so happens that when there is people, you have proper guidance, you have teachers, when you're a student or you're being trained in archaeology or any field, but those teachers don't overpower, their presence, or they don't spoon feed you. They're not always hovering over your head and looking at you and managing and managing what you're doing. Actually, you end up learning more. Same thing happened with me. So when I was excavating, we ended up exploring few sites in that region. And when we explored the site, I was studying the pottery, and our director, my guide, he told me that, why don't you just write a report? Just write it. Just describe the pottery, describe the site in whichever way you want. Just do it and just give me the report. And I started slowly, I started working on the pottery. I started working on the sites. I started describing the sites. I started looking at it from a different perspective. And then I started reading about it. So when I was doing all of that, I realized that there is a huge gap in this area, which has not been touched since 1950s. 1950s. So the data that we have is outdated now, because we have now better dating. We have not only this C14 dating, but we have other modes of dating, and also the new dates are coming up, and they're sort of breaking these old narratives. And I thought that nobody is willing to talk about it. Everybody wants to stick to the old narrative because it serves a purpose for them. And I'm talking about, the area I was working was in Western India. And PJW, the nucleus is basically in the eastern India, which is on the bank of river Ganga, which is a very big river in India. So maybe the intention was to keep that focus on Ganga and not to shift the focus all the way to Western India. But imagine a archaeological material which is spread right from the west, all the way to the east, from north to the central India, spread over vast area. You think that there won't be diversity, there won't be, any sort of trade, that there won't be any micro regional variations in the cultural material, or even the subsistence pattern. I mean, it's hard for me to believe because I live in a country which is very diverse. Every 200 meters, everything changes. It just didn't make sense to me. And I decided to explore it. And when I started doing that, I realized there's no preliminary work. All the preliminary work that was done in 1950s, 60s, and I had to redo it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to sort of reevaluate the published data. I'm trying to look at it from more scientific aspect. I'm trying to do more analysis. So actually, it was, as I mentioned, when your teachers just let you be, you start finding those research questions, and then you will end up doing the best job you can instead of you being forced into a project.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like a really, really interesting project with a lot of like potential as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential, and I'm just one person doing this project right now. I don't have much collaboration.
I came across you kind of through Instagram and your Confessions of an Archaeologist Instagram profile, which you started a few years ago. Can you tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to kind of start that?
I grew up, in Delhi, New Delhi, when you have Facebook and then Instagram, around 2012, 2013. Then you have Instagram booming, and then you have the social media, and there's so much of information through internet. And suddenly, you, as an archaeologist or a student of archaeology, you see no information on archaeology whatsoever. And given the rich archaeological heritage of this country, I thought, there is need for engaging with public. And as a society, we are very much in tune with our culture and our traditions, and religion play a very important role, because archaeologists don't open up and they don't speak the facts and the data. A lot of theories are then created, a lot of myths are then created, and then they are spread across, in the society, and then sort of, goes from generation to generation. And I thought that there needs to be a platform where we, talk about archaeology, but not an unbiased archaeology coming right from archaeologists, not through a journalist or through somebody who is not a field archaeologist. Because as an archaeologist, I know that what our perspective is very different from an historian's perspective. When we look at site, it's very different from a layman's perspective, right? So even if you read an archaeological report, you will not be able to read between the lines. So the idea was simple, that to tell people that, look, this is what we have found and this is what we have not found, and also to give platform to a lot of archaeologists, the people from our generation, younger archaeologists who are just trying to make their career, and introduce them through social media to the people. So that was my intention. I started in 2017.
It sounds very similar to my own story of why I started my channel. In the UK, it was kind of similar. You could find some information, but it could be hard to find, and it certainly didn't exist even in video format on YouTube, somewhere like YouTube and social media and Instagram. We've been really slow on the uptake of that. So yeah, I think it's really important, as you said, to kind of disseminate this information directly from archaeologists rather than going through journalists who can, get things wrong, or they like make things like sound fancier than they are because they think that's going to generate the interest. So yeah, that's great. If you guys don't already follow Disha, make sure that you do. All of her information is going to be in the description. I've read a few of your interviews where you've talked a little bit about some of the challenges that you've had working as a woman in the field in India, because I feel like you're quite a pioneer in that respect. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, yes. As I mentioned, I've been little lucky to have people who really helped my cause, who did not hold me back. And actually, in India, we as a society, we are still not able to push our daughters. We like there is a lot of a lot of women are educated, they are pioneers in their own fields. The societal pressure, the society, and our own conditioning is such that it's just we are always held back, and we ourselves don't want to go out and venture out and go out and do anything which is not the norm. Going out of the box and doing things which are not normal or not the traditional route is sort of a challenge. But as I mentioned, I'm lucky that I was raised in a family which sort of did not condition me in that way. My schooling was not, really enabled me to look out of the box, look beyond the certain narratives and move forward. And I was able to make my own choice very early on in my life. Like my parents did not hold me back, my family did not hold me back. So I think when your family is supportive, and especially in a country like India, where family plays an important role. I think anywhere else, not only India or South Asia, but I think anywhere else, once your family is supportive, I think you won half the battle. And when I started working in the field, coming from a sort of a sheltered or shielded life, it was a shock to me at first, because you meet people who come from different backgrounds, people with different perspectives, especially men having their own perspective about women and what women are supposed to do and how women are supposed to work, what women are supposed to wear, what women are supposed to say. Well, a lot of people didn't like me because I am quite loud in sense that I speak my mind. So people are still, they want women to be submissive. I was not that. So I faced a lot of backlash. But what I really kept my eye on the goal. I muted all the voice. I just shut the doors on all the things that were happening in the background. And I knew that if I have to survive and I have to be a field archaeologist, I have to work my way through it. I decided not to take crap from anyone. I think that was the best decision of my life. But I think in a long run, when people realize that, this person, this individual is not going to take shit from us, they will let you do your work eventually. And after 10, 11 years of working in the field, I've realized that. But it was very difficult also. I had to really fight my own social conditioning. I knew that if I complain a lot, we are always taught as women we should not be complaining. Because if you complain about certain things that are happening to you, people will take you as a liability and not as an asset. So it was a battle for me to become that asset and not a liability. I didn't complain to my boss about things. There will be a lot of harassment will happen to me, and not from my team all the time, but locals. People do not take me seriously because I'm a girl, and if I'm supervising an excavation, they will like go to the next, the man standing next to me who will. I'm his supervisor, but they will not talk to me, but they'll talk to him. And there will be small things that will happen to you, but I realize that if I'm going to complain now, people are going to say, this, Disha, she works in the field, but she has so many complaints. I don't think she's going to survive. So I knew that I have to not do that. So I held back, I endured, and also students give, the male ego is such a thing. The boys in your group, and if you're heading, if you're supervising the excavation, they don't like you commanding them. You have to sort of work your way through. And I'm still actually, recently I got married, and I remember going back to the field, and a lot of my colleagues were like, Disha, we thought you won't be coming for excavation. And I asked them, why would you even think that? No, because you got married. Maybe your husband or your family will not allow you to work. You'll be away for months. And I'm wondering, really, like, do I need permission? Like, I don't need permission. And then suddenly someone else was like, okay, it's okay, Disha is working, she's married. But after 3, 4 years, when she has a kid, she won't be able to do this. So let her enjoy the field work. It's an ongoing process. I get a lot of young girls in the group for training in the field. I'm happy that I'm there because when they're menstruating, they have the periods in the field. There's an issue with that. A lot of us have had to endure. Like I had to endure. I had nobody else to talk to. But I make sure that when I'm in the field, they can come and talk to me about these things. So if they are in a lot of pain and they need a day off, they get a day off. These small things I think makes a lot of difference, and also educating the boys in the field to be a little considerate with their female colleagues, and to make sure that the girls are also taking the lead.
That's really great that you're setting that example for the next generation as well, right? Like you showing that you can do this, that this can be done, you can basically have it all. So that's, I think, a really important standard to set as well. Moving on to kind of, these are my like short fire round questions. What is your best and worst field experiences?
My best field experience, I think, was my first excavation, actually, my first trench that I supervised individually. I think that was the best experience. I don't think I'll get that thrill and that sort of, I won't go into it unknown and without knowing anything and then sort of learn in the field. My worst experience was I was excavating a site in Uttar Pradesh. We were staying in a boys' hostel in India. It's a ancient concept that is followed called the Gurukul, where the young boys stay in a hostel and then they learn about Vedic chants, and they learn about the Vedas and all of that. In that hostel we were staying, and actually the hostel was on the mound on the site itself, and I would get these boys will come and sort of will switch off the light at the middle of the night at 3 a.m, and then suddenly the lock of my room will be broken, and then so all of that was the worst experience. I endured that for almost, like, I think 6 months.
That sounds awful. Jeez. Mine's mostly related to the weather. So, what is your favorite artifact or thing that you've discovered or found on site?
Ooh, favorite artifact. I mean, like, there are many artifacts though, but the favorite thing that I think, not discovered, not me individually, but the whole team maybe, were the chariots of Sinauli. They were one of my all-time favorite things that were discovered in front of my eyes by the entire team, and my teammates worked tirelessly doing that. But if you ask me, in the personal thing, that artifact that I have excavated, I'm very unlucky with the artifacts. I'm very lucky with the structures.
So, what's your favorite structure that you found then?
My favorite structure was, I think, the Rakhigarhi's wall. There was a wall which was about 18 meters, and there was a street at the center. There were two walls, and then the street. It was really interesting. It was made of mud bricks. So mud bricks is always tricky. So it was one of the things. I really love it. It's beautiful, that Indus Valley mud brick walls and walls you see in those textbooks. It's something similar to that. Yeah.
Whenever I talk to archaeologists and stuff like that, everybody always has their like ideal thing that if they could like find it, they would. So like some people, it's like, oh, if I could find Cleopatra's tomb or whatever. So in thinking in that vein, if you could actually choose these things, keeping in mind that we can't choose these things, what artifact or discovery would you like to make?
Find the horse. In ancient India, there's a big, debate around horse. That horse riders migrating from the west and then entering the subcontinent. But then with the chariots and minus the horse, it sort of leaves the whole discovery incomplete. So I would want to get the horse. I have this. Then I'm excavating a trench, and then I find a full skeleton of horse in prehistoric period, because we know that the horses in India are much later in antiquity. The Arabic horses, they are actually coming from the west. But then the indigenous breed is sort of not known. There are a lot of theories which are actually riding on the horseback in our country. So with the chariots and no horse is sort of, it still leaves a lot of room for new discoveries. So maybe I'll get a horse.
What would you say to like encourage or inspire other people, maybe specifically women as well, to follow in your footsteps?
I mean, I'm still learning. The advice that I can give to students is that don't get disheartened when you hear a few things in the field. Like, I was lucky to find amazing teachers. They will push you forward. And because they have done that to me, I always wish that every student get that. So in India, I just want to advise students that if you're getting into archaeology, have that focus. You will be able, you will face a lot of issues in terms of, there'll be no money, not much money in archaeology. I think it's the same in many parts of the world. It's not only to India. There's not much financial or benefit coming from archaeology. So if you want to be an archaeologist, you really need to put your heart and your mind into it, but also be careful and make up your mind when you get into archaeology.
Yeah.
And always work hard. There's no shortcut, I think, in archaeology. You think that you can like do a lot of work without getting your hands dirty. That's not archaeology then.
What are your future career aspirations for, for when you finish your PhD? Like, where do you want to go in future?
I would really like to teach, secure a position in a university and then teach. More than the administrative work and other work, I think I like teaching. I like being in the field.
Awesome. Where can people find you on social media so they can keep up with your journey?
So I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Ahluwalia Disha, and I am on Instagram as well, which is Disha Ahluwalia or Confessions of an Archaeologist. On my bio, there will be my email address, confessionsofanarchaeologist@gmail.com. You can write me if you have any doubts, queries, questions. If you're an archaeology student in India or want to work in India, you can write me and you can follow me on Instagram. And I write regular columns for the print. I write columns and I also do the video columns. So you can Google me Disha Ahluwalia at the print. It's an online newspaper in India, and I write about archaeology. So you can read my columns, and I would really love for you to read my columns. I'm a new columnist.
All the links to all of your things that you've mentioned here will be in the description box below so that people can find them.
Thank you.
So yeah,
Thank
perfect.
you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that wraps everything up for today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and to learn a lot more about the archaeology of India.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform. It's really fun to like talk about archaeology with fellow archaeologists, of course, and a women archaeologist talking to another women archaeologist. So it's really nice because see, whenever I give interviews, if people don't usually ask me about the condition of women in archaeology, especially in India, they think it's too sentimental. So I'm really glad that you asked me that question, and I'm really glad to be part of your journey as well.
I think it's important. It's an important thing that we need to talk about. And like specifically, I do, I interview people from all over the world and from both like men and women on my channel. But I do like to try and feature as many female archaeologists as possible to really reinforce that, we are out there, we are doing the work, and we have just as much of we're just as capable as men at doing it. So.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, time to pack up our trowels. That's everything for today. What part of the interview did you like the most? Don't forget to comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel before you leave. You can follow Disha and her journey on Instagram via the Confessions of an Archaeologist account, which will be linked in the description below. If you are feeling extra generous, you can go to my Ko-fi page and support me with a small donation. Or if you want a more tangible return, you can visit my Redbubble store and buy some archaeology-themed merchandise that I've designed myself. Taking a few seconds to support me in any way that you can helps the channel grow so that I can continue to provide you with quality heritage content that you can trust is well-sourced, researched, and presented by someone who is an expert in this subject. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, and I'll see you on my next adventure into the world of archaeology.